Oh my god. Oh,
I'm ready
shoot.
to sign off.
Bet
No,
you
I'm not
are.
gonna tell y'all what we laughing about, but thank you for doing
Ooh.
this. It's
I'm
how we
ready to sign
start these
off.
conversations. Uh,
Oh,
I'm Dylan. I'm joined with Jason and Darius. Missing our brother Maurice. We're sending up prayers for him. He's just getting so much near rest, guys. And so tonight, my brothers are gonna carry me because I'm gassed. I ain't gonna lie. So I figured that I'd take the first swig at this thing, let you all know who we are. This is When Men Are Intimate Live, and we are a public expression of a private commitment. And so there's more of us, right? There are brothers who we talk to, we have chosen to live life with. Um, let them hold us accountable as we hold them accountable. We grow together, we laugh together, we cry together, and it's a brotherhood. And so we decided to take a little piece of that and bring it live for people to see, for it to bear testament that these brotherhoods exist and there are safe spaces for men, right? With that being said, honestly, it kind of takes us into our conversation tonight. Um, oh, it's Paul, man.
Whoa.
I ain't seen Paul in a minute. What's going on, brother?
Oh, wow, man.
Oh, shoot.
It's
Um,
good to see you, brother. And well, at least to see your name. My gosh.
yeah. So it kind of takes us into our conversation tonight. All three of us are pretty good, big basketball fans, and I don't know if you guys have heard, but Draymond Green, what's up, Brian? Draymond
Bro.
Green has been suspended indefinitely for smacking Nurkic. Because there's no other way.
backhanded that man.
He backhanded that man, which is just not okay. But I think that it is important that as brothers, we yeah, Paul, he I know he just came back from suspension for choking somebody, but like last night he turned around and smacked somebody. And so like he's been suspended indefinitely, the league not having it. But I think it goes to a larger point of the Brian's a wild boy.
It was a love tap.
That's some tough love. God
Hey,
dog.
he
is.
from
It is.
Detroit. That was a love tap.
Right. If anybody has Draymond on your fantasy team, you might want to go ahead and drop him because he wants
Wow.
Wow.
like
It's a wrap.
it's a wrap for your boy. But it speaks to a larger point about like brotherhood and community and like really being able to see like, okay, all right, we acting out like something might be up. And maybe nothing is up, but how do you hold like let's say nothing is up, but how do you hold one of your brothers accountable for actions that he has that is affecting the whole, right? Like this absolutely negatively affects his basketball team, his brotherhood, right? It affects his pockets and his family. Like he spent maybe $6 million on fines in his career, like just crazy.
Like 3 or 6.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's a wild thing. And so like to that larger point, what do you do if this is a sign for help or maybe it's not? How do I hold my brother accountable to do, you know what I mean, like to do better? You know what I mean? And so I'm gonna shut up because y'all gonna have to carry me.
Yeah. I mean, you said you're gonna have to carry you, and you basically just ushered us on in. But yeah. So was there a question in that, or like question like what do you do like
Yeah,
in a
like what do
Draymond
you do?
situation?
Or I mean, maybe I'm looking at this wrong, and like I think that it's fair for y'all to have reaction because listen, it just happened, right? So like, what is that? How do y'all feel about what has happened?
Yo,
Ooh, that's
let's
a good one.
go.
That's a good one. How do you
My
separate
boy.
the action from a pattern? Like that's good because like he got a pattern. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like so to answer the answers Anthony's question or to answer Anthony's question, I think that what's interesting about this is like and can you put that up again? Because I just want to make sure
I
that
got you.
So I think it's one thing that like I think the key to to differentiate is consistency,
Mm.
right? And I've seen this in a variety of different ways, and sometimes we only equate consistency to good things, right? So we'll be like, oh, you got to be consistently disciplined, or we'll talk about it from a variety of different ways. I think that sometimes what we have to understand is sometimes that consistent pattern of negativity
Mm-hmm.
leads to something deeper that may need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, like, for example, and I'm gonna use this as a real life example. I noticed a pattern of somebody that in something that I was a part of. And I was just like, man, it always seems like there's this pattern of like missing stuff. Like, I'm gonna do this, like, but then miss. And I'm like, at some point, if you call yourself a leader, we have to address this pattern, because this is doing more damage to us in the long run
Mm-hmm.
than it is in the short term. And it was funny because before we hopped on, Jason, I always call Jason the grace person, because immediately Jason is just kind of like, well, let's look at this from a different angle, guys. Like, and I was just like, initially, and they'll tell you initially, I'm like, bro, miss me with that.
Yeah, that's
like
cool
I'm
too.
not trying to hear nothing you talking about it. But Jason's approach, I think, to a deeper rooted issue came from what I think answers this question. And Jason, I actually want you to pick up from here, was the fact that, like, Jason analyzed what has been going on throughout the season. And he was like, now I know that we know him for being aggressive and we know that he plays a certain way. He was like, but this year, there seems like there's something a bit different. And when he said that, it even forced me to kind of like sit back and be like, man, you might actually be on to something there, because it is different. And one of the things that I don't feel like we mentioned earlier that one of my friends had mentioned was this goes back to the Jordan Poole incident. That was this year as well. And so,
wow, it was at the top of the year.
It was at the top of the year.
Wow,
that's crazy.
And so this goes back to that this has been a consistent thing that's been going on, and you just don't know what's going on. We aren't privy to his personal life, but I'll say this about me, and then Jason, I'll let you go, is that, like, sometimes we have patterns and there's things where we know that we may not know that we're off, or if we do, we need to say something. So even last week, I wasn't here in the group because I noticed that something was off. I wasn't feeling like myself. Something was off. And I communicated that to them, like, hey, y'all, like, something's off and I need to figure it out. I need to take a step back and figure out what it is, because I noticed that I wasn't myself. But being able to have people who, one, understand that and are embrace me in doing that matters, as well as having the ability to self-assess and be aware that something is off, and this isn't just me being me based off of who I am and where I grew up at.
Yeah.
And so with that, I'll give y'all this backdrop, because I've said it before, and I think it bears repeating, that when we do these lives and everything, like, I can't come to the mindset that I'm trying to be impressive. Like, I have to be real, I have to be authentic. So when I'm seeing Draymond, I'm seeing myself. Here's what I mean. I'm not backhanding people or anything like that. Like, nothing of that has happened. Well, I've wanted to, and I'll explain that too. So, listen, I'm just keeping it a buck. So, so as I'm seeing everything going with Draymond, like, okay, I'm noticing, like, okay, all these things kind of happen in succession. The team's not doing good. Even he hasn't really even been doing his podcast. Like, and I was locked into the Draymond Green podcast. Like, I really enjoy the content, but he hasn't even, like, been doing that. So I'm like,
oh, really?
At least I haven't seen it. Like, I subscribe, but I ain't get the bell notification from YouTube, nothing. It's been nightcap recently. That's another story, but it's great. But anywho, like I feel like he hasn't really been doing the podcast. All these things have been going on. The Warriors have not been who we've known them to be over the last like 6, 7, 8 years or anything like that. And so in all these actions of acting out seems to be creating a pattern, because a repeated action over time is a pattern. And so, okay, so now that we're like seeing this pattern, it's like, that's what makes me think like, okay, what's up? Because we've known Draymond to be expressive, and if you do something like how he tried to explain it, like, oh, I was trying to sell the call and everything. So we'll see him do that, flail and everything like that. And if he flails his leg and somebody's man parts are in the way of his foot, he's gonna get kicked. Like we've seen this, but this has just seemed more like, all right, bro, are you okay? Like, what are you on? And so that's what, when we started talking about it, that's why I was saying, like, I feel like he needs something. Here's even more so reason why I say that. Last week was a very irritating week because my son was acting like a butthole. I don't know if you should say that as a parent, but I'm going to say it. To me, he was I'm like, just like, dude, you're making huge deals out of nothing. He's 4, by the way. So I get how this sounds, but like, you're making big deals out of nothing. Like, it's these fits and bursts of like anger and like tantrums. And he's never really been like a tantrum kid. Like, to be honest, like, he's a really good kid, but it's just in the most recent things, it's like, dude, what are you on? And so it's a really tough thing trying to like regulate your own emotional state while dealing with somebody who doesn't care about regulating their own emotional state and is illogical in the same process.
Well, you said something there. Said something there. Like,
should we slow up?
Put a pin in that? We're gonna put a pin in that, but keep going with your statement. But we gotta come back to that.
Cool. And so, so all that's going on, and I'm like, I just don't know how to like respond to you, because my initial response is like, what you mad for? Like, yeah. But I get that's not gonna like be well received to him and everything. And so then maybe like, okay, maybe I need to give him a little pop in the butt. But like, me and my wife, we decided that's not the pattern that we want to set when it comes to disciplining our children either. So it's like, I can't pop you. Well, I'm deciding not to pop you. And especially if I do it now in my angered state, it's going to be too hard. So like, I can't really pop you right now. Yelling at you isn't effective. I don't know what to do right now. And
indefinitely.
Listen, boy, he was going to be in that corner indefinitely.
Indefinitely. You know what I mean? You're going to be in that corner till I get tired of looking at the wall.
Listen. I mean, basically. And so I guess just with that, I had a conversation with somebody, and basically they're like, hey, just keep in mind, like usually this is when kids act out like that means that they need something. So I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that, because just what's going on in our lives, there's just a lot of transition happening. Like in the last 3 months, we moved to a new place. We're building a house in another state. So we're going to get ready to move across states. He's not going to be by his cousins anymore. So that transition's rough. We're bringing in a new tyke that will be born in January. And so like, he's going to be a big brother. So there's just a lot of changes happening really quickly. And I never stopped to think that, all right, man, I'm feeling overwhelmed by all these changes. Maybe he is too. Because my thoughts is like, well, you're a kid. You don't know what you don't know. And like, we're here, nothing has changed. Like, it's all good, but not keeping in mind that like, he's not just a kid. He's a smart kid. He's an observing kid. And so he, even though he may not be able to voice it, he knows what's going on. Saying all that to say he needs something. And so then that made me start to think about myself, that I'm kind of right now in a space that I feel it, that like, okay, Jason, I need something. Like, you need something. Yeah, did it?
Cool.
Yep.
Just let it ride. Do your thing, bro.
Hashtag own best friend. But But for real though, like I've been really like kind of sitting with myself over the last couple like days that like I need something like kind of like how you're saying, D, like just kind of feel off, like, and I'm trying to figure out like what is it do I need? Like, do I need to do more? Do I need to do less? Do I need to rest? Do I need to work? Do like what is it do I need? Because it feels like I can't slow down because there's so many things that like garner my attention, but also feel like I can't put the attention to each thing the way it needs to be. And so like how it almost feels like I'm trying to eat a whole elephant in one sitting instead of just trying to do one bite at a time. But I'm like, no, the whole elephant's here. I got to try to eat it all. And it's like, I literally can't. And so for me, my pattern, which has been my repeat actions over time, is that when it feels like there's so much to do, I do nothing. Like I get so overwhelmed where it's just like imploding. It's like, okay, well, since I don't know exactly what to do, I'm gonna do none of it. Yeah. And I'm just gonna like just sit here, wallow, and probably just shoot my troubles away on the sticks with Fortnite. So like so saying all that to say, and kind of circling back to Draymond, that's why I said in the beginning that like when I saw Draymond, I saw myself, because it's like you're acting out. I can see that you need something, and I can relate to that because I feel like I'm in a space that I need something. And so it's like, bro, like, are you okay? What do you need? So yeah.
I think that like there's that other aspect to it, right? Of like he probably couldn't back out of, like, he probably couldn't get out of it if he wanted to, right? Like this has become how we know him. And so like you're not shocked that he like hit somebody, right? You're disappointed, but you're not shocked, right? And then there's the multiplier of like, it's like if you're a problem child at school, right? Like even if it wasn't your fault, it's your fault. Even when you know what I'm saying, like even if like somebody did something to you and you reacted to what was happening to you, still your fault, right? Because of your patterns, right? Because of like your history of like what you've done over time. I think that like what was interesting, and I'm going back to that pen, what was interesting about what you said is that like you said something to the effect of, I'm interacting with somebody while I'm trying to regulate my emotions who don't care about regulating theirs.
Yeah.
Right. Which for a 4-year-old, that's okay because you're dealing with a 4-year-old.
Exactly.
But when another grown man doesn't care about navigating his emotions and we trying to do a thing, like we're trying to like be in relationship or like compete against one another, and I have to regulate mine, but you don't regulate yours, that creates a very dangerous situation for me, right? That both considers like it's a dangerous situation to be opposing him, and it's a dangerous situation to be on his team because he's volatile
and unpredictable. Like I can't, like, reliability has a predictability factor to it. I can rely on you because I can predict what you're going to do. So if I can't predict what you can do, that makes you unreliable, and now I can't trust you.
And that's a huge problem. Like, and so like, as I heard this from Stephen A today, right? And so like I've been kind of locked in on this issue, like listening to different people talking about it all day, because like it does concern me that Draymond, being like a black man in society, is like already labeled as like anger management issue, right? So there's a race level to it. I'm not playing up the race level, but there is a component to it, right, that like reflects on the whole because of what he's doing, right? And so like, but Stephen A was like, if this had been a LeBron James teammate, the question would be, LeBron, what are you doing? What about your leadership? how are you handling X, Y, and Z? To like, why isn't this like being addressed? Right? If there's an accountability because like LeBron is known as like a leader in the locker room, right? That same kind of accountability, or at least the conversation, isn't being had for like, you know, his other teammates, right? But like it does bear to the point, if one of us is tripping, right, like and acting like way outside of what we know each other to be doing, like, is there a responsibility for y'all to check me both public and privately?
I've never been a proponent of like public condemnation.
Okay.
That's just kind of my thing. Like if there's like any issues, like let's handle that privately first, like between one another. Like I think there's some biblical, I'm not well versed in it, but correct me where I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's in
But I
Romans.
think,
You're right. It's
but
supposed
yes,
to happen privately first.
it's like private first, then bring in some more people, and then if it still can't like happen, then it's like, okay, public, here's where we're at.
Right. But
Sort
like
of.
Draymond has punched a teammate in the face, stumped a dude's chest in, like choked another dude and smacked another dude in the face. All of this happened publicly. You know what I'm saying? Like, at what point? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think this is my question is, so if we stay along that Romans thing, right? Like, we can't say, I feel like the indefinite suspension, is it finally being a public matter now? Because this is the reality, right? The Jordan Poole incident was not supposed to be leaked. It was a team matter, and they were handling it in-house. There are probably other things that has happened that's handled in-house, right? Like even when we look at what has happened from outside, right? We look at it from the commissioner stance. There are certain rules and regulations that's been put in place to deal with these type of behaviors. At some point, you got to be like, all right, enough is enough. And I think that's where we are with him. And what's crazy, at least, or what comes to mind as we're talking about him, the person that I feel like he's reminding me of in this moment is Rodman. And the thing about Rodman was, no matter where he went, you knew what you were getting. Here you go, Dean. This is me, your thing. I know who you are, and I know who you're not.
Yeah.
And because I know who you are, when it comes to winning, when it comes to all these other accolades, because when it comes to stuff, we kind of be like, okay, I know who you are. I know what you're good at. I know what you're not. But at some point, I think what happens is, like, just because we've accomplished a lot, just because we've had this relationship over the years, and we've done great things, right? In an abusive relationship, we can always justify the abuse because of the things that we've accomplished that was good. And so at some point,
yowza,
I think what's happening here and what's kind of exploding is like, it could be, right? Could be some of the unaddressed stuff or the things that we've been talking about, right? Like we think about this from a relational stance, or just even individually. We talk about like, yo, we've had this conversation over and over again. You've been saying you were going to get help. You've been saying you were going to do this. You've been saying, but at some point, what you've been saying isn't translating into your actions. And now we have to do something different. And that's what I really believe is kind of like what's happening with Draymond in this moment, that I look at, like, from our perspective and just in general, is like, yo, it's only so much that we can take, because I don't believe that the conversations haven't happened.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know what I'm saying? They're one of the things that they talk about, like I've listened to championship teams talk about camaraderie and what it takes to win. They have a certain relationship. Like they're like, when teams win, it's because of how cohesive they are, because of their time spent on and off the court, not just on the court, not just on the field, not just in the classroom. It's on and off, how intertwined it is. So in order for them to be one of the best dynasties that basketball has ever seen, that means that there is a relationship there. So my question, my thing is like, it isn't so much to the team as much as some point it's a personal responsibility, because we got to get to a point where I have to look in the mirror, and because here you go, it doesn't matter what Jason says to me and what Dylan says to me about me. It's not until I make the decision that I want to change that it becomes a thing. And if I've hung my hat on something and you're questioning me about something that I've hung my hat on or something I identify with, then it takes a whole different turn, right? Because like we know Draymond for a thing. We know him from a certain identity, and just being real, like as somebody who has first cousins from Detroit and spent time in Detroit, coming from Youngstown, where I come from, living in Cleveland, like we know there's a certain mentality that comes with growing up in these places. And at some point, where the rubber meets road is, are you going to hold on to your past and where you came from so much that it hinders you from moving forward in the future, and you can't really benefit because this is the thing, people will argue, well, he's already benefited, but how much more could he have benefited had he been willing to deal with some of the stuff that he may not be dealing with?
2016, I'm a huge Cavaliers fan, huge LeBron fan, right? Draymond Green is in that game, like plays that whole series. I don't know we win that. You know what I'm saying? And so like that's a big thing. And I think that, like, to Brian's question, right? If you have a brother or friend who's more of a silent leader, are they obligated to speak up? That's a real question, right? It's one thing to suggest that, like, it's up to you personally, right? But as your brother, don't I have a responsibility to say something to you? Even though, like, you need to make a decision, don't I have a responsibility to say something? You know what I mean? Like, what is the obligation of, like, the silent brother or friend or teammate, like the guy who's maybe not the vocal leader, but like, no, at some point, do you have an obligation to say something? I think so, right? But like, I guess maybe it's the question of like how you do it. So
my question to Brian would be like, are we talking about speak up publicly or privately? And the reason why I say that is because, like, we can't, based off of where we are, right? We can't say that people haven't spoken up. You know what I'm saying? But to get in the media, yeah. So if we're just talking about privately, absolutely, because we have a relationship there. There's a certain relationship that if we really rock how we say we rock, how dare I let Dylan or Jason fall knowing that I see something wrong and then say that I love you and say that you my brother and say that I rock with you? Like, to me, that's not being a real one.
I think that, like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you got it.
I think that, like, I agree with that, right? And like, to this point, I think that, like, this is where I'm at, like, an open review, secret love, right? There comes a point that, like, you're messing with what we stand for, right? And so, like, as a brother, like, I can, like, hold you to a thing and say, like, but if we doing something as public as, like, being an NBA superstar, right? Or as public as ministry, right? Which is what we do. If you are out here, like, acting a complete donkey, and we've had the conversations and it's still happening over and over again, my silence becomes an endorsement,
Yeah.
Right. And so like now people are looking at you like maybe what he's doing is okay. His brothers are rocking with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying anything to the contrary. I'm not saying that you got to bash old boy, but there's something that needs to be said. You know what I mean? Like, because like when we talking about, if we talking about like the Draymond Green situation, like we got people, young boys, looking up to them on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, listen, Draymond Green is my brother, but this behavior is unbecoming of a professional. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we've had those conversations, X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. But like, you gotta say something because y'all represent a brand together, right? Like, you're sending out a message together. Y'all won 4 championships together, right? And so, like, you gotta say something, right? Like, I feel like you gotta say something, right? I want to drop this in here. The Robin and the Cowboys in the 90s. Like, this is, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, Paul.
So I feel like I'm these kind of things are kind of tough for me. Here's why. Because is there obligation to say something? I think we unequivocally agree on that. Like if you are like my brother, like if I call you that, then if I see you acting in a way that is like, if I see that your pattern's off, then I have to address it, because like, no, your pattern is usually this, but now I see your pattern going like this way. That way I know it's not like beneficial to you or anything. What's up? So yes, I feel like you do have to say it. Like, you do have to say something. And I don't know, I always kind of struggle with like, yes, you do have to say something, but I'm also kind of one, like, after I've said something so many times, my silence isn't in an endorsement. It's almost kind of a letting go. So if you continue on the pattern, I'm not saying like, okay, I'm good with it. For at least for me, my silence is more like, well, I've said it again. I've said all I needed to say. I don't know what more you want me to say. And I'm taking it out of, basketball to like real life, like real life relationships and stuff. Like if I had to keep saying something over and over again and whatnot, like, and I mean, I do it with my son. Like, he keep asking something. I'm like,
bro,
I said what I said.
Bro, even when we look at it from a biblical stance, like disobedience, at some point, God just stops talking. Yeah. Look at how long he stopped talking for 400 years. Like, enough. Like, I'm not. So wait, I didn't see all of it because I was talking.
Okay.
Ooh.
So wait, here's the other one. We ain't gonna talk about this, but that's a bar, and I think that has something to do with it, right? Ooh. So bad conflict, like that complexion.
It is.
Complexion play a part, bro. Like it just does.
But it's true because again, we all know him. Like, this is nothing new.
Yeah.
Like, each one of us has said it. We've just like, oh, it's just a bit more excessive than normal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's not like we haven't. And so I actually, like, that's real. Like, it's like, oh, yeah. It's like, it's one of them things where it's like, it's beneficial for us until it's not.
Yep.
And one of the things I've been trying to stay away from, because we're trying to like keep it biblical, if you will, right? It's just the fact that, like, for some people, this is business.
Uh-huh.
And so what's getting the clicks, what's getting the likes, who's tuning in, like Rodman was an attraction.
Yeah.
So people brought him in. One of the reasons why he was brought in was also for attraction. Like, they did All the Smoke podcast, did an interview with Dirk, and Dirk talked about that year he was there, and he was like, he was like, as far as like team wise, it didn't work well, but boy, was it a time when he was there. You know what I'm saying? Like when he was there, it was an attraction. And he even said, like, I learned more about marketing. No, I think this was Cuban that said like he learned more about marketing from Rodman than he has anybody.
Wow. That's saying a lot for Mark Cuban.
Yeah, like he was like he's one of the top. So Paul brings up a very, very good point, because like Paul, you trying to Paul, you taking it to a place, boy.
This, I think, to this question, right? What obligation is there, right, for the sports organizations to help, right? Because like, and we talk about this, right? Like, and basically making the same point, blaming the ringleaders, right? Man, just bars. Like, y'all giving it to us tonight, ain't you? Like, just bars. Like, it's an attract. Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And so, like, what responsibility? And that's I think that like I'm trying to like level in these conversations, because like it's bigger than Draymond, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a thought around like how men operate in community, and what responsibilities do we have to one another, right? You know what I'm saying? Because like, even when it comes to the like sports organizations, you could replace sports organizations with churches. You see what I'm saying? Like, what responsibilities exist in those places?
So I'll say this, even from the organization standpoint, in which you just said, D, this is why you have the Players Association. This is why you have why it's the team, because the reality is like like, if we want to be completely honest about this, what we're talking about, the NBA is here for entertainment. That's what they're here for.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the reality is like a lot of people's, here you go, a lot of people's mentality goes back to the LeBron situation with old girl and the shut up and dribble. That's what a lot of people's mentality is. And now, like, so a lot of people, and one of the things that I think is one of the reasons why people kind of the love hate with the commissioner now is because he's not just do as I say, and that's going to be that. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people have talked about like, well, if this was Stern, this wouldn't have been this way or whatever. But I feel like with Silva, he's trying to be more player focused and trying to do more of a, because when we think about the organization as a whole beforehand, it's really not their obligation. Like, I pay you to play basketball. That's what I pay you to do.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that now, has it become more than that? It has. It's grown more to be more than that. But the reality is, it's like, to me, the camaraderie within the teams and amongst the people that's together is more important. So like, when you have like a Cuban, for example, who everybody talks about how being a part of the Maverick organization is one of the best things that it could be. And he was intentional about that based off of what he did and how he did it to make it a certain way. But overall, I feel like the response to us is more about the brotherhood within it and the camaraderie amongst ourselves than it is about outside of us. Because like, even as somebody who plays sports for a long time, like, even though we're in it together, there's a disconnect between the coaches and the players. Like, it's just not the same level, because like, as players, we're in a certain space together all the time. We're doing certain stuff. Like, you build relationships, you build friendships that last forever. And I'm gonna go here. And when we don't have the right camaraderie and we do whatever it takes to win, we end up like the Bulls. Because
he said what he
Hold
said.
on. Hold on.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go
You
into
went-
it because I'm not going to
That
leave
we
it there.
left, bro. Like
So-
I wasn't prepared for that.
Winning organization.
Okay.
We talk about how dominant they were. They have the most confliction between any team we have ever seen that was successful. Between the Jordan Pippen thing, the Horace Grant, and like all these people who what we deem was successful based off of the rings, but yet like years later, you have all this mess and chaos
Mess.
between them. And from what we're talking about, that does not speak to brotherhood. That does not speak to I'm making sure you good and you making sure I'm good, and I understand that you have a family and that you have kids, and we want what's best for you and your family and your kids, and talking to you about how your actions affect your legacy.
Yeah.
It's bigger than the moment. And sometimes you have people who are only there for the moment. And that's when it gets dicey, right? And even to what you said, D, even when it comes to certain organizations, whether we're talking about church or whatever, if I just use you for what you can give me and the talent that you have for me, then it has absolutely nothing to do with the betterment of us overall, or the betterment of men, or the betterment of anything else, except for said organization or whatever the goal is that we're trying to meet at the time.
And sweet Jesus, because we I feel like now going to the church organization, let's just keep it a buck. We see it all the time that, man, these musicians can play their butts off, but there's a disconnect between them and the rest of the church because they're there just for a check. And they're there just for a check because they're not getting fed into. There's no camaraderie. There's no community. But hey, we're winning because look at how the pews are filled up. We're winning because we're seeing so many souls go to Christ and everything like that. And so, yes, we're getting the quote unquote rings within the church, but we're not really winning.
The rings within the church? Why?
I mean, because like that's the thing in this evangelistic focus kind of type church model that we have. It's, you know, like it feels as though sometimes it's like, okay, man, we can just fill up the church, get people saved. That's great. We got the dub, put on the banner. We can say it at the end, and it can help.
Put it on the banner is crazy.
And then and I'm not fully coming for like end of year offerings and stuff, because like a lot of churches use that and it's very helpful and everything. But some church can use that. They're like, oh man, we give so many souls to Christ and everything. Now, you know, help us continue the mission, giving our year-end offering and everything like that. And then that's what makes some people feel leery about giving to churches when they see all that, because then now you look over here where it's like, okay, I see what you're saying, but I know this dude over here that play for you every Sunday and he out smashing everything that walks through your doors. So what's going on? and it's all because now I feel like, and then it really kind of goes into like there really has to be discipleship. Like whether it is a sports organization, whether it is the church, whatever the case may be, there has to be discipleship. There has to be accountability within one another. And when you don't have that kind of accountability, that's when you can win and lose.
So you saying that they have like full churches but empty souls? They just moving.
Yeah,
moving.
It happens all the time, bro. That like, I mean, that's why you see so many of the same people back at the altar call.
Yeah, and I would even argue that the true legacy of the impact of a church would be longevity,
Mm.
right? I was listening to, I can't remember if it was John Bevere or if it was somebody else, but they were talking about
You've been
how
really into John Bevere lately.
I think this was when we were doing the fear of God, when we were all studying the fear of God. But I think it might have been him talking about how he was talking to his father-in-law, and they were like driving around somewhere, and they were talking about church, and he was talking about the importance of longevity because he had been around, like his father-in-law had been around for a long time, and he was just like, hey, it's like basically telling him like it's about longevity. He was like, I can take you around the city to where some of the biggest churches was in our city, and there's just empty lots now.
Oof.
Because there was no longevity. You know what I'm saying? And what made me think about it is even when we think about because we've been talking about basketball, right? People who are committed to a certain thing, organizations is committed to a certain thing, you see longevity. And I'm not just saying this based off of, because they know I'm a Lakers fan, but I'm not just basing this based off that. When you look over the totality, you look at like the Celtics and you look at the Lakers and you look at the length of time that they've been doing this at a high level with the different sets of people, there's something to be said. And granted, ownership has shifted, but there's something to be said about what was really going on and what was the buy-in over a long period of time versus this was our season.
Because it's easy to burn hot, but it's hard to burn long. Because what's the other banner that Toronto Raptors are hanging? They burn hot for that one season. Cool.
Whoa, you out of pocket. Hey, I was really trying to think too.
Can I give you a layer deeper, because like I'm with you on the longevity of a church, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I'm more interested in the production of a church, right? Like not like,
well, that's why I said legacy.
Yeah, so like the
Because
legacy,
I'm talking more about
like what does it produce, right?
Yeah.
So like thinking about
Because
somebody
longevity, we could just be on 135
for
20 years and never be bigger than my pinky toe. Like that doesn't mean that it was big, it was impact. It just means that like
because you think about the coaching tree of like, and that one's for you, D. I know that you'd appreciate that. Think about the coaching tree of Pop, right? Greg Popovich.
That is great. That is
the coaching tree.
That's a great example, bro.
Like he's basically at this point in his career, he's playing against himself over and over again, right? Because like his coaching philosophy permeates the entire league. You know what I mean? Like, I guess we got a bunch of Lakers fans in the chat. No matter what, Lakers sings. Right? And so, like, but that stuff is important, right?
Great.
You know?
That is so great, D. Did you mention that? Because like what you made me think of is people talk about the that on Netflix there's a series, and it talks about like these coaches that are well known, and I think Pop was one of the ones that they were talking about, but it talks about the culture, which can also be the discipleship that Pop does as the coach there. And that's the reason why he's been there for so long. That's the reason why they've built what they've built, and they've continued to be great over the time frame that they've been great, is because of what they're pouring, what he's pouring into them.
Yeah.
And how he's developing them. Like, and I say this to go back to the point earlier, people can feel how they feel, right? Ginobili Tim Duncan, David Robinson are still good friends to this day.
Mm-hmm.
They rock with each other.
Mm-hmm.
They had a whole situation when Wembanyama showed up that he ate with Duncan, David Robinson, and one of the other ones to pour into him as he's starting this legacy or starting his journey on being a Spur.
Yeah.
Like, that is what real brotherhood and real community, when it comes to this aspect of sports that we're talking about, that's what that looks like. When you come in and you're able to be poured in by generations who've done it before you, to make sure that you're good. And my man said after that dinner, he said he's learned more in that dinner about basketball than he had his entire life.
Wow. That's heavy, bro.
And it's the selflessness and the humility that takes a culture like that to happen. Because when Wembanyama had to be humble enough to be like, even though I'm the number one pick, I don't know it all. I don't know this game. Even though I've been playing this game, I really don't know it for real. And these are the greats that have been very successful in the sphere that I want to be great in. And then it takes the old heads to be free and selfless with their info and their information and their wisdom to be like, hey, I see something in you. Let me deposit that into you so that you can be great. And so it's like, it's a meeting of both sides. And I think where we miss it sometimes is it's sometimes we don't have both, that you have a wise somebody that wants to pour, but they're pouring into a closed lid, like a closed jar rather. And then you have this hot shot that don't want to hear nothing, or I don't know, whatever the reverse of what I'm trying to say. So you either got the old head trying to pour in and they can't get nothing because the hot shot think like, man, I already know it all. You can't tell me nothing. Which no shade, but we've kind of seen that with Ja Morant. That it just seemed as though people have tried to pour in and say, hey, Ja, this ain't the move, and that's why we haven't seen him this season yet. Because you think you got it all, and you're not taking hold to wisdom.
Or to your point, you have the opposite, where I'm up and coming, and y'all so busy trying to hold on to the mic that y'all don't want to pour into me because you found your whole identity in what you do and not who you build.
So this is a bar, right? Realizing the goodness of God, women to repent, realizing the truths of God, keeping us from have to, right? Like bar.
Listen,
we got heat tonight, y'all.
Listen.
Legacy and culture can welcome humility, like just.
Hey, I knew we was in for it when I started seeing certain names pop up, especially the fact when like I've had conversations with Paul for long times, and man, like I knew we was in for it when I seen Paul active, and then Maurice popped up. I was like, my God,
we in it.
Maurice like, I don't have a voice, but I got this. I'm a type.
I got you.
It's working for you on this keyboard, though.
I think so. We have a couple weeks left in the new year. I mean, in this year until the new year, right? It sounds like we need to have a real conversation about like a masculine theology and the importance of a brotherhood. Like, what does that actually look like? How do we navigate that? Right? Because like in these other spaces that are not necessarily like our churches, but even in our churches, how we hold each other accountable, like why we walk through the way that we walk through, like what does that humility look like? How do you even go about that crap, right? Because like we lifted some of these ideas today, right? But like the truth of the matter is a lot of us are in silos, right? A lot of us are like living lives by ourselves with the pressures of the world on our shoulders, of our worlds on our shoulders, right? Like the reality is like you kind of live in your own little world, right? Like my when I was working at the Episcopal Church, guy by the name of Father David, who I credit a great deal with my like theological construct, like how I think about the faith. We were talking about the differences between how I think of salvation and how he thinks of salvation. And he said, like, I think of salvation as God saving me every day from becoming the God of my world. Right. And it's a concept, right? But we are moving in that space of like, we're doing the things to take care of our wives and families, right? Like we're doing things in community. Like, how are we doing things together? Right? Like, how am I holding you accountable? So like when you do spin off the rails, because we all will, or we all have, when you do spin off the rails, like how do you get back? You know what I mean? Because like the scripture tells us that we should restore one another quickly. Right. And so like you who are spiritual, you restore one another quickly. Right. And so brother Draymond will be suspended indefinitely. But how does that impact his brotherhood? Right. And like you can take Draymond's name out, put my name in. Right. Like we've had situations that we won't go into fully publicly. Yeah. Like we've had situations where it looks like I spent off the rail, right? And so like, what does it look like to restore quickly, right? What is that like? What does an intimate brotherhood look like? What is intimacy when it comes to brothers? I think we should spend some time talking about that when our brother back on it, because I know if Maurice is still listening to this, he is itching right now, right? Like we are absolutely talking to him about this because that's his jam. All right, like I'm a chill. Do y'all have anything that you want to kind of leave with? Because we had a pretty active chat tonight. Anything y'all want to?
I appreciate y'all being active, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. It helped a lot.
I don't necessarily have any like last will and testaments tonight. I think it was just a good overall convo. So yeah.
Money bags.
I think that like the biggest thing that I'm just thinking about at the end of it is just the importance of our choices, man. You know, I don't know where the quote started at, but you know, they say like you're born looking like your parents and you die looking like your choices.
Talk.
And so I think the importance of the trajectory of our lives in general has to do with the choices that we make. And one of the things that we haven't talked about tonight, but I'm gonna highlight and kind of like put a pin in it, is like also the importance of us having emotional intelligence, because that's the difference between me knocking you out and me not, me choking you and me not, me, you know, backhanding you and me not. It has to do with emotional intelligence and being able to control your emotions in the midst of heated situations so that the outcome doesn't end up hindering you and your family. Because regardless of how much money he's made, like it affects him and his family. Like that indefinite suspension is without pay. Like they're not about to pay you because you're suspended.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, man.
I want to leave with a comment that Paul had, because I think that we should talk about this, right? That intergenerational moment. Because you did bring up that topic, and I think that we should definitely explore it. I want to say thank y'all for tuning in tonight. We're wrapping up right on time, right? Like we had a hot hour this this week. We'll be back next week. It is the episode before Christmas. So, definitely tune in. We might have something special for you. And other than that, love y'all. See y'all all soon.
Buenos noches.